clubs are saying that the transportation assistance that was provided to them previously was not made available to them this season, and as such, it was difficult for them to participate in the domestic competitions. Can you speak to this?
Okay, so in relation to the transportation assistance, over the years, and so let me go back to provide some perspective. Transportation for the teams going to St. Kitts has been shared by the Department and Ministry of Sports and the Sknfa. Now, the Sknfa would have introduced the grant program, and teams have access of up to $25,000, of which it is recommended that some of that goes towards transportation. The NIA, the Ministry of Sports in particular, the Sknfa would have also had a discussion with us about subsidizing some of that cost so that they don't use the entire grant on transportation. And thus we agreed, I'm talking from the Ministry of Sport, the Ministry of Sports agreed to subsidize the cost for the teams traveling to St. Kitts. So in terms of the cost of going back and forth, and it has never been a real issue over the years, the NIA has always subsidized the cost of teams from Nevis going to St. Kitts. So the cost of traveling to play the games, I don't think was an issue. It has never really been an issue. So I am surprised that it came up as an issue this time around.
One of the things that Mr. Morton said was that last year the teams were given ground transportation on St. Kitts. He is saying that that is no longer provided.
As I mentioned previously, the grant was supposed to go towards transportation, both going and so. But the Sknfa would have also said that they, in some instances, would have assisted with the ground transportation, especially for the teams coming from Nevis, because everybody was asking about assistance with ground transportation, not just the teams from Nevis, but the teams from St. Kitts. So the Sknfa was saying that because the teams from Nevis is coming from further distance, the peninsula to be exact, and most of the time they now travel via the Holy Route, that they would have also assisted in terms of transportation in that regard. Please be reminded that the grant is supposed to go towards transportation as well.
So it's just a matter of them managing the funds to be able
Managing
to.
the funds and managing the funds and communicating when and where there are difficulties. Once you communicate in advance in terms of the ground transportation part of it, then yes, Sknfa would do its best to accommodate.
And Queen City would have also received this grant as well, or was it just BAF?
First of all, in order to understand how Queen City is able to access the grant, Queen City themselves is not a member of the St. Kitts Nevis Football Association. The Nevis Football Association is. So
Mhm.
Queen City participate in the league under the auspices of the Nevis Football Association. So just needed to clarify that. So the
Right.
Nevis Football Association is the one that has access to the grant, which of course will be used by Queen City, was used in the past by Queen City in order to get travel, get uniforms, all of that. So the grant that is in access by the Nevis Football Association is what would have helped Queen City, well, in the previous season.
Another complaint is that the games, scheduling of games, that they've asked for the games to be scheduled in at a later time so that they will be able to have their players that finish work at 5 get themselves ready and be over in St. Kitts in time to play these games. What you're saying is that when the games are scheduled early, like the first match at 6, that it's difficult for them to make that game.
Initially, when the schedule was constructed, previously the Sknfa would have gotten complaints about, the Nevis teams and them playing late and the young girls being on the water late, reaching home midnight and stuff like that. So the new schedule, the 2024 schedule, was constructed in good faith in terms of addressing that particular issue, not knowing that it created a bigger concern in the long run. So I just wanted to provide that bit of caveat that the schedules was constructed to address that particular matter of young girls being on the road late, getting back to Nevis minutes to 12, getting home, after 12 and so forth. Mr. Morton, after the first game, he did reach out to me, indicated that there's an issue with the schedule. Mr. Morton and one of his senior players reach out in terms of how early the games are. So I told him, okay, I'm going to go back to the relevant persons, have those discussions, and to see how and what we can do to accommodate changes in the schedule. Bear in mind, any major change to the schedule will not just affect Queen City, but the other participating teams, match officials, everybody. So a conversation needed to be had with all the relevant stakeholders to see how we can accommodate. The process began in terms of what we can do to accommodate Queen City in terms of the time and so forth. A number of suggestions were put on the table. One, start the games later, 6:30 or 7. There was also the option of playing the games 7, but playing at two different venues, so we don't really affect the schedule that much in terms of a team now. Two teams would have previously played late have to play earlier. And three, the third one, which the one I think that they would have preferred, is to just flip the games. So whoever was supposed to play at 8, now play at 6, and they play at 8. That one was the most difficult because it affects the other teams, and the other team necessarily would want to wonder, well, why playing 8 o'clock will be better for me as well. And so we had to dissect the schedule and see how we could come up with a compromise for Queen City. The process takes some time, Mr. Yui. And so during that process, we came up with the idea, why not find a way of, based on each individual match week, maybe we can use a bit of each of the suggestions that I previously mentioned. So the process was underway of reconstructing the schedule so that we could accommodate Queen City and their requests. But then having reconstructed a schedule, we will need to get all the stakeholders in the room in order for the schedule to be approved. Unfortunately, Queen City would have missed a number of games prior to that process being completed. As a matter of fact, on the eve of their last game, the last chance to not miss 3 games, it was basically completed. Now it was just to have discussion with all the relevant stakeholders. I remember that particular day, the president of the Nevis Football Association would have been contacted by the general secretary to encourage the team to come and play the game so that they don't break that particular rule in the rules and regulation. And it must be noted that the league is governed by rules and regulation. And once you participate in the competition, it means that you basically consent to play under those rules and regulations. The effort was being made to accommodate Queen City, but they violated the rules and regulations before we were able to put that particular new schedule to the general body in terms of these are the recommendations of how we're going to accommodate Queen City and the request in terms of the time being changed. So as I mentioned, we incorporated all 3 of the previously mentioned recommendations. But as I said, we had to dissect the schedule, game by game, match week by match week, and so that we don't disrupt too much.
Several games were played in Nevis to accommodate Bath in the Premier League this past season because the Mr. Morton was saying that requests were made for games to also be played in Nevis, and the only games for the female league that were played in Nevis or were scheduled to be played in Nevis were the games between the two Nevis teams. Judging from how the Sknfa would have accommodated Bath for the Premier League, were there any plans to have games in the Women's League on Nevis this season?
So again, it is important to provide some background. There was a meeting held with the clubs and all the female clubs, and one of the major recommendations on the table is that in order for us to continue to go to female game, we needed to provide the same operational support or the level of operational support that we see in the Premier League and Division 1. And one of the recommendations in that meeting was that they recognize that now that the Division 1 games are centralized compared to when they were played at the different venues all over the countries, that things have improved in terms of operation, in terms of attention and so forth. And so the females in that part, well, the representatives of the teams in that particular meeting would have said that is the way to go with the female league. They feel that if the games are centralized, then they will get the attention, the operational support that is required to elevate the game. The representatives from Queen City in that particular meeting never objected to the idea of the games being centralized. And so when they left the meeting, we were all on the same page that everybody was okay with the games being centralized.
And centralized meaning centralized on St. Kitts.
St. Kitts, yeah. I mean, yeah. Having said that, we recognize the disparity in terms of the Nevis teams having to come over more than the St. Kitts teams going over. The major difference is that the Nevis teams tend to get more support from the government compared to the St. Kitts team. So it's easier for them to travel. However, However, we also again had discussions about how can we put more games over in Nevis, but we'll have to find a way to get the Sinkers team get this similar type of support that the Nevis teams get. And so again, conversations will be had as to how do we change the dynamic to ensure that there are more games being played in Nevis. As you would have recognized over there, this is the first time there's been a number. For example, take the Premier League, for example. The most Premier League games ever been played in Nevis has been the past 2 seasons. And that is a fact.
Yeah.
The most games have ever been played in Nevis have been recently, and that is a fact. Those are facts. The most female games that ever been played in Nevis has been recently, and that is a fact. And so we were trying to do what's necessary to accommodate Queen City because we understand the request, we understand the challenge. I would have been a female coach, a youth coach previously, also worked with Bath. So I understand the challenges of going back and forth thinking. So I was using my position, my influence to make the necessary changes to try to accommodate Queen City in particular, who we're having a discussion about. But sometimes I think that persons can get a bit impatient in terms of waiting for the result they desire.
We also noticed that Bath did not field any of their youth teams to play in the youth
Mhm.
competitions, citing the same issues, saying that it's expensive and costly to send their teams over, and they wanted some games to be held in Nevis. What is the situation with the youth league games, the youth teams?
So in relation to Bath, we would have had conversations with the executive of the Bath United. Bath United has been one of the teams that is most heavily supported by the Department and Ministry of Sports in Nevis. So them going to St. Kitts to play game was, as I mentioned, same it was never an issue in the past. I think it became an issue this year for reasons that are not what are being portrayed. But that's a story for another day. So we would have had conversations with the executive about both the president and the vice president about the games playing. First, initially the issue was the cost. We were like, okay, we are accustomed to cover the cost. The Sknfa said they would also subsidize some of the costs. So that didn't become an issue. Then we recognized that Bath United
And this is
chose
for the Premier League
this is for we're talking youth league now.
youth league. Okay.
Yeah. Then we recognize Bath United would have been scheduled for all the youth league, under 15, under 17. But they opted to go and participate in a competition in
Mhm.
Antigua when they were scheduled to play in the youth league matches. Now, nothing is wrong with that, but there are procedures where clubs, members especially, participate in competition in other jurisdiction, they are required to seek permission from their host associate, from their host association, their association. We communicated that to BAT just to make sure that once they make the official request, then we can make the adjustment to the fixture. They never responded officially or unofficially. I communicated again unofficially and said, well, the coach has taken the team to Antigua. There's nothing they can do about it. Even on their return, we communicate again. Are you still participating in the youth league? We were told that they won't be participating in the youth league. And so that is why they were withdrawn from the competition.
As it relates to going forward, especially where Queen City is concerned, but what would be the position of the Sknfa as it relates to Queen City for the Women's League going forward?
Well, first of all, I want to just applaud the job that Mr. Morton has done with those young ladies. I think he has done an incredible job with them. I remember when he first had the conversation with me about his plans. I was happy to hear that we're going to be having a second female team coming out of Nevis, and this shows the growth of female football here in the federation, but specifically in Nevis in this instance. Um, First of all, there will be a conversation, a sit down, because there needs to be a moment to clear the air and put all the cards on the table. Because there were things that were said that were not completely true. The things that were said were not completely true. And we need to put all the cards on the table. The Sknfa is very much interested in development of football here in Nevis, as you would have seen by a lot of the initiatives that would have taken place over the years, not just with this executive, but the one before as well. We are not trying, and I say we because I'm now sitting in the position of Assistant General Secretary. We are not trying to hamper the development or the participation of teams from Nevis. As a matter of fact, over the years, me personally, being a member of the executive then, and even not being a member of the executive, just from the position of being the director of sport, has done everything in my power to ensure that teams from Nevis, individuals from Nevis, are very much involved in the football ecosystem here in the federation. And so the next move is to have a conversation with Queen City, not only Queen City, because as I mentioned, Queen City is a member of the Nevis Football Association, or they participate under the auspices of Nevis Football Association, but also Bath United as well, as to come up with a solution moving forward that we all can agree on and for the betterment of the young people, because at the end of the day, that's what the game is for, to advance our young people through sport. And so the next step will be a conversation, come up with some compromise on how teams can be accommodated moving forward.